Okay, delighted to say back today with another edition of The Snap. Michael Heaver here alongside, of course, my co-host Patrick O'Flynn. And Patrick, of course, I've got to ask, how are you?
I'm fine, waiting for the sun to come out to play again, observing politics, and we're in a bit of the close season, traditionally, you would call it, I suppose. But it's quite interesting. The government is certainly hitting a bit of a rocky patch on a few fronts.
Yeah, I mean, look, certainly on the issue of illegal immigration, of course, we've seen the numbers continue to surge. I know there's huge concern out there. And YouGov, Patrick, with this bombshell polling, revealing that this is now the number one issue for Conservative voters. Now, I know you've written a piece for The Telegraph on this. What do you make of this, Patrick?
Well, as I say in the Telegraph, the sort of liberal left view has been that immigration is falling away in salience. But I think that's completely wrong. I think we've all been taken up by COVID, the battles over Brexit. But the irregular landings on the south coast have catapulted the issue right back up to the top of the agenda. It's caused the Tory ratings to fall, but most of those voters have just gone from Tory voters to don't know, because they've worked out that Labour, Lib Dems, Greens, whoever, would be even more lax and even worse on the issue than are the Conservatives. So I think that's kind of disguised the severity of the disenchantment felt towards government by many conservatively minded voters who finally want to see some kind of delivery on cleaning up our immigration system.
Yeah, so what YouGov have done is they've asked voters what their top three, most important issues to them facing the country are. And what YouGov have found is that over half, so 53% of Conservative voters say now that immigration is a top issue facing the country. That's slightly more than, say, the economy, more than health. And interestingly enough, I mean, this is a trend that's been going up. Tory concern over immigration, YouGov note, has been on an upward trend since the spring, only around a third having put it in their top three from January to late March. So look, Patrick, it's undeniable, certainly among Conservative voters, the importance of this issue has absolutely skyrocketed recently.
It certainly has. And another issue that it's way above is the so-called code red warning for the future of the whole of humanity that UN bloke put out the other day. Well, according to Tory-minded British voters, the state of our immigration system is much more important than that. And as you say, it's been rising since the spring, which very much makes you think it's related to the South Coast cross-channel boats in particular, which, obviously peak between spring and autumn. And there's a Farage effect in there as well for kind of raising the profile of the issue. And I now note that Richard Tice and the Reform Party, after many months where they've been majoring on anti-lockdown concerns about vaccines, have suddenly started going large on concerns about the immigration system. I personally welcome that. Whether they keep the focus up, let's see. But when you've got Nigel Farage on TV every night talking about it too, I think Richard Tice is wise to kind of push that association in the eyes of voters and remind them, and perhaps this can be the issue that gets reform off its 2% and up to 6 or 8%. And if they take those votes from the Tories or out of the don't know column that Tories have jumped to, then I think you could see potentially a big political impact and Conservative MPs finally getting worried that, until they really sort this issue out, that they're on the slide.
Yeah, I mean, look, despite this concern that's clearly there, the YouGov poll that came out yesterday actually showed the Conservative lead over Labour increasing. And obviously, as we've talked about before, a very big part of that is the fact that the Conservatives still have a big lead amongst working class voters over Labour, much larger than their lead with middle class voters, which is much smaller. And you're also seeing now that Leave coalition still pretty holding together pretty big for the Tories. I think it was 67% of Brexiteers still intending to vote Conservative, compared to only 50% of Remainers who say that they are currently prepared to vote for the Labour Party. Patrick, if this does continue to escalate in terms of the numbers, in terms of the illegal migration route across from France to Kent, how do you see that playing out? Do you think that could see reform rising in the polls, or do you think support for the Conservatives is going to hold steady no matter what?
I think reform, if they keep talking about the issue and focusing on it and try to own the issue, which means a bit more than a toe in the water, it means really going for it, that reform, there is 5 to 10% of the entire electorate at play who would be attracted to a much tougher message than the Conservatives, and tougher delivery than the Conservatives are currently implementing. On the other hand, we've got to wait and see what the impact is from Priti Patel's Nationality and Borders Bill, the extra provisions, the extra powers. Does she, in fact, perhaps next year move to open an offshore processing centre? I think that would win those voters back very quickly. On the other hand, building an enormous new reception centre for illegal landers at Dover would seem to indicate the white flag being run up by Tory ministers. And obviously, Priti Patel is one thing, but Boris Johnson's in charge of this. I think there's a section of the electorate that wants to wield pressure on the Tories and would welcome reform being that vehicle. But whether reform will sustain focus on the issue, that's up to them. And so far, they've kind of blown hot and cold on it, and that's not really good enough.
Look, guys, keen to hear from you, those of you watching here on the Snap, what you make of the government's handling of this, what you make of Richard Tice's Reform Party, and what you want to see done in terms of curbing this escalating crisis in terms of illegal migration. Do let us know in the comments below. And myself and Patrick will be back soon with another edition of The Snap.
Take care, folks.